In the quiet town of Umudike, where red earth roads curled around mud houses and mango, trees shaded old wooden benches, two brothers grew up under the same roof but with very different destinies waiting for them. Their names were Chinedu and Obinna. They were sons of Pa Okorie, a respected palm wine tapper and small-scale farmer who was known in the whole community for his honesty. Pa Okorie was not a rich man, but he had a good name, and in a town like Umudike, a good name was more valuable than a full bank account. Chinedu was the first son. Tall, broad-shouldered, and always serious, he looked like someone born to lead. From a young age, people naturally listened when he spoke. His teachers liked him, elders praised him, and even strangers admired him. Everything he touched seemed to work out well. When he planted corn, it grew tall. When he played football, he scored. When he spoke in class, everybody kept quiet. Obinna, his younger brother, was different. He was shorter, softer in voice, and more emotional. He was also intelligent, but he did not shine like Chinedu. No matter how hard he tried, he was always standing in Chinedu's shadow. When people talked about the Okorie family, they talked about Chinedu first. "Ah, Pa Okorie, your first son is a star," villagers would say. "He will go far in life. He will make you proud." Nobody ever added Obinna's name. At first, Obinna didn't mind. He loved his brother. He followed him everywhere like a loyal puppy. When Chinedu went to the stream, Obinna followed. When Chinedu went to play football, Obinna sat on the side watching him with admiration. But admiration slowly turned into something else. One hot afternoon when the sun was burning, the red soil and women were spreading cassava to dry in front of their houses. Pa Okorie called both boys to the veranda. "Chinedu, Obinna, come here," he said. The boys sat down, sweating lightly. "I have only little money, but I want at least one of you to go far in school. Chinedu, your teacher came today. He said you are doing very well. I will send you to the secondary school in town." Chinedu's eyes shone. "Thank you, Papa." Obinna sat quietly. His chest felt tight. Pa Okorie turned to him. "Obinna, you will stay here and help me in the farm until we can get more money." The words cut Obinna like a knife. He forced a smile, but inside, something broke. That night, while the sound of crickets filled the air, Obinna lay on his mat staring at the ceiling. "Why is it always him?" he thought. "Why am I never enough?" From that day, something dark started growing inside Obinna's heart: jealousy. As Chinedu left for the town school and began to shine even more, Obinna remained in Umudike, watching his brother's success from afar. Every letter that came from Chinedu talking about school, teachers, and opportunities felt like salt on a fresh wound. The brothers were still family, but slowly, silently, the distance between them was turning into a deep, dangerous gap. And nobody in Umudike knew that this small seed of jealousy would one day grow into a tree of hatred, betrayal, and blood. When Chinedu left Umudike for the town of Abangwu, life changed for both brothers, but not in the same way. Abangwu was bigger than their village. It had tarred roads, tall buildings, noisy markets, and schools that looked like palaces compared to the mud classrooms in Umudike. For Chinedu, it was like entering a new world filled with promise. For Obinna, it felt like being abandoned. Every morning in Abangwu, Chinedu woke up to the sound of buses honking and traders shouting their prices. He lived with their uncle Mazi Ibi, a tailor who worked hard and believed strongly in education. Mazi Ibi made sure Chinedu woke up early, washed his uniform properly, and never missed school. "You are not here to joke," Mazi Ibi would say. "You are here to build a future." Chinedu took his studies seriously. He was always among the top 3 in his class. Teachers liked him because he was respectful and hardworking. Some even said he would one day become a big man, maybe a lawyer or an engineer. Each time he heard such words, his heart filled with pride. But he also remembered Obinna. Sometimes at night, after finishing his homework, Chinedu would sit by the small window and think of his younger brother. "I wish Obinna was here with me," he would think. "We could be studying together." So he wrote letters, long letters. He told Obinna about school, about his new friends, about how big the classrooms were and how kind some of the teachers were. He even encouraged Obinna to read and not give up hope. But those letters did not bring comfort to Obinna. Back in Umudike, Obinna's life had become harder. He woke up before sunrise to follow Pa Okorie to the farm. The soil was rough on his hands, and the sun was cruel on his skin. While other boys his age were wearing school uniforms and carrying books, he was carrying hoes and baskets. Every time he saw school children passing by the road, laughing and talking about lessons, his heart ached. One afternoon, while he was resting under a mango tree after hours of farm work, a boy named Sadiq, who attended secondary school in a nearby town, passed by. "Obina, you are still farming?" Sadiq laughed. "Your brother is in town enjoying school while you are here suffering." Obina forced a smile, but inside he was burning. "Yes," he said quietly. "That is how life is." But that night, when he opened Chinedu's latest letter and read about science classes, competitions, and teachers praising him, Obina felt something ugly rise inside him. "So while I am here breaking my back, he is becoming a big man," he thought bitterly. He started to see Chinedu's success as a personal insult. In his mind, his brother was not just lucky, he was stealing a future that belonged to both of them. Even Pa Okori did not notice the change. He was too busy worrying about money and survival. "Obina, you are a good boy," Pa Okori would say. "One day when Chinedu finishes school, he will help you." But those words sounded empty to Obina. He no longer wanted to wait. Slowly, quietly, jealousy began to turn into anger. And anger, if not controlled, can turn into something dangerous. The brothers were now living in two different worlds, one rising with hope, the other sinking into bitterness. And the gap between them was growing wider with every passing day. Unseen, unheard, a storm was gathering between them. By the time 3 years passed, Chinedu had grown taller and stronger, and his dreams had grown bigger. He was now in senior secondary school in Abangwu, and people were already calling him our future graduate. Mazi Ibe boasted about him to customers in his tailoring shop, and Pa Okori would smile proudly whenever Chinedu came home for holidays. But Obina was no longer the same boy Chinedu left behind. The small, cheerful boy who once followed his brother everywhere had disappeared. In his place was a quiet young man with eyes that carried anger and disappointment. His shoulders were heavy with farm work and his heart was heavy with pain. When Chinedu returned to Umudike for Christmas that year, he was happy to see his family again. He hugged his father tightly and then rushed to Obina. "My brother," Chinedu shouted. "See how tall you are now." Obina forced a small smile. "Yes," he replied. "Time is moving." But Chinedu did not notice how cold his brother's voice sounded. That evening, the family sat outside under the moonlight, eating pounded yam and ogbono soup. Chinedu talked excitedly about school, about how he came first in mathematics, and how his teacher said he might get a scholarship. Pa Okori clapped his hands happily. "My son, you are making me proud." But Obina just kept eating in silence. Each praise felt like a slap on his face. Later that night, Chinedu went to Obina's room. "Obina, why are you so quiet?" he asked gently. "Is everything okay?" Obina looked at him and suddenly all the pain he had been hiding rushed to the surface. "You don't know how it feels," he said. "Every day I am in the farm sweating under the sun, while you are in school becoming a big man. Everybody talks about you. Nobody sees me." Chinedu was shocked. "Brother, I didn't choose this alone," Papa decided. "I wish you were in school with me." Obina laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You got everything." From that night, something changed between them. The warmth was gone. Chinedu still loved Obina, but Obina no longer saw him as a brother, he saw him as a rival. And in that small village, a dangerous hatred was quietly taking root. The Harmattan season came with cold mornings and dusty winds that covered Umudike like a gray cloth. Chinedu had returned to Abangwu after the Christmas break, but the words Obina spoke to him that night still followed him like a shadow. He could not forget the pain in his brother's eyes. Back in town, Chinedu tried to focus on his studies, but something was wrong inside him. He felt guilty for being the one with opportunities. Many nights he would sit on his bed and think, what if I had stayed in the village with Obina? Would he be happier? But life did not wait for anybody's guilt. Chinedu soon got news that he had been selected for a special government scholarship exam. Only 5 students from the whole state would be chosen. If he passed, his school fees for university would be paid. When Mazi Ibe heard it, he almost shouted with joy. "This is your chance, my boy. You must not fail." Chinedu was excited, but he also felt uneasy. He knew that if he succeeded again, Obina's anger would grow, so he decided to write to his brother. In his letter, he told Obina about the scholarship and added something else. He promised that if he won, he would make sure Obina also went back to school. "I swear, my brother," he wrote, When I succeed, I will carry you along. We are in this together." When the letter reached Umudike, Obina read it slowly. For a moment, his heart softened. But then doubt crept in. He has always been the one succeeding, Obina thought. What if he is just saying this to make me feel better? That same week, a visitor came to Umudike, Mr. Danladi, a man who worked as a clerk in the education office. He was Pa Okori's old friend. Over palm wine, Pa Okori told him about Chinedu's scholarship exam. Mr. Danladi nodded. Yes, but these things are not only about intelligence. Sometimes connections matter. Obina was listening from behind. That night, Obina did something that would change their lives forever. He secretly went to Mr. Danladi and told him lies about Chinedu, that he was arrogant, troublesome, and not serious. He offered to help Mr. Danladi get some money if Chinedu's name was removed. Obina did not even know why he was doing it. He only knew he wanted Chinedu to fail. That was the first betrayal. And once a man takes the first step into darkness, it becomes easier to walk deeper. The day of the scholarship exam finally came. In Abangwu, Chinedu sat in a large hall with hundreds of other students. The room was hot and filled with tension. Some students were praying quietly, some were sweating, and some were biting their pens in fear. Chinedu closed his eyes for a moment. "God, please help me," he whispered. He wrote the exam with all his strength. When it was over, he felt tired but hopeful. Weeks later, the results were released. Despite Obina's secret plan, Chinedu still passed. He came second in the whole state. When the news reached Abangwu, Mazi Ibe danced around his shop like a small boy. "You did it! You did it!" Chinedu smiled, but something felt wrong. He expected to feel pure happiness, but instead he felt worry. Back in Umudike, Pa Okorie cried tears of joy when he heard the news. But when Obina heard it, his heart sank. So all his effort had failed. That night, Obina sat alone in the dark, staring at the wall. His jealousy had now turned into bitterness, so deep that it felt like poison inside him. When Chinedu came home to celebrate, Obina could barely look at him. Instead of being happy for his brother, he felt humiliated. And slowly, his love for Chinedu was turning into hatred. Chinedu returned to Umudike for a short visit after the scholarship. News spread across the village. People came to Pa Okori's house to greet him, bringing coconuts, palm wine, and warm smiles. They called Chinedu our pride. Obina watched everything from a distance. Whenever people praised Chinedu, something sharp stabbed inside Obina's chest. He started avoiding his brother. When Chinedu entered a room, Obina would find an excuse to leave. One evening, Pa Okorie noticed the coldness between his sons. "Why are both of you behaving like strangers?" he asked. "You are brothers. You came from the same womb." Chinedu looked at Obina with sadness. "I don't know, Papa. I want peace." But Obina said nothing. Later that night, Obina went out and met with some boys in the village Kalechi, Ibrahim and Sunday. They were boys who had dropped out of school and now spent their time drinking burukutu and gossiping. "You are lucky," Kalechi said. "Your brother will soon become a big man." Obina laughed bitterly. "Yes, and I will be nothing." They started filling his head with poisonous words, telling him Chinedu would forget him, that rich people never help poor relatives, and Obina believed them. His heart was now fully poisoned, and from that moment, he started planning something terrible. The rainy season returned to Umudike with heavy clouds and muddy roads. Thunder rolled across the sky like angry drums. Inside Obina's heart, a similar storm was raging. Every day he watched Chinedu being treated like a hero. Even young children bowed when he passed. Women whispered about how handsome and intelligent he was. Pa Okori could not stop talking about his first son who will soon go to university. Obina felt invisible. He stopped going to the farm. Instead, he spent more time with Kalechi and his bad friends. They drank, laughed, and talked nonsense. But inside, Obina was planning something dark. One night, while they sat beside a small fire, Obina spoke. "I am tired of living in my brother's shadow," he said. "If he was not around, people would see me." Kalechi looked at him with interest. "What are you trying to say?" Obina hesitated, then spoke quietly. "If something happens to Chinedu, everything will change." The boys went silent. The rain was falling heavily, hiding their faces. Sunday swallowed. "You mean, kill him?" Obina did not answer, but his eyes said everything. The seed of murder had been planted. The night it happened, the rain fell like heaven had opened its doors. Thunder shook the earth, and the village was quiet except for the sound of water hitting zinc roofs and muddy ground. Most people were asleep, wrapped in their blankets, unaware that something terrible was about to happen. Chinedu was in Umudike that night. He had come back for a short holiday before leaving for university. He was happy to be home. Despite everything, he still loved his brother. Earlier that evening, he had tried to talk to Obina again. "My brother, let us stop this anger," Chinedu said softly. "I am not your enemy." Obina looked at him with cold eyes. "You don't understand," he replied. Chinedu left the room feeling heavy in his heart. Later that night, Obina slipped out of the house quietly. His heart was beating fast. His clothes were soaked with rain, but he did not care. He met Kelechi and the others near the old palm tree at the edge of the village. "Is everything ready?" Obina asked. Kelechi nodded, holding a thick stick. "Yes." They moved silently toward the house. Chinedu was asleep when they entered his room. The rain was loud, covering every sound. Obina stood there, looking at his brother's peaceful face. For a moment, his heart shook. "This is my blood," a small voice inside him said. But the jealousy was stronger. Kelechi raised the stick. "Do it," Obina whispered. And in that dark, rainy night, blood was spilled. Chinedu cried out once before everything went quiet. When it was over, Obina fell to his knees, shaking. His hands were red. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Morning came to Umudike with a strange silence. The rain had stopped, but the air was heavy, as if the village itself knew something terrible had happened. Birds were quiet, and even the usual noise of women pounding fufu was missing. Pa Okore was the first to notice something was wrong. "Chinedu?" he called, walking toward his son's room. "My son, wake up." There was no answer. When he opened the door, the world broke. Chinedu lay on the floor, cold and still, with blood around him. Pa Okori screamed so loudly that people ran from their houses. "My son, my son!" Within minutes, the whole village was there. Women were crying. Men were holding their heads in shock. Nobody could believe that Umudike's golden boy was gone. Obina stood at the back of the crowd, trembling. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it would burst. He tried to look shocked like everyone else, but inside him, a heavy stone of guilt was crushing his soul. "What have I done?" he kept asking himself. Pa Okori collapsed to the ground, wailing. "Why, God, why did you take my son?" Those words stabbed Obina like knives. That night, Obina could not sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Chinedu's face. He heard his voice calling him brother. Jealousy had given him what he wanted, but at a terrible price. After Chinedu was buried, Umudike became a village of mourning. Black clothes filled the compound of Pa Okorie. The once lively house was now silent and broken. Pa Okori looked like an old man overnight. His shoulders were bent, and his eyes were always red from crying. Obina stayed close to his father, pretending to be a grieving brother. But inside him, fear was growing like fire. People started asking questions. How can a strong young man just be killed in his own room? Who did this? Was it thieves? The village elders called for a meeting. They decided to report the matter to the police in Abangwu. When Obina heard that, his heart nearly stopped. Every knock on the door made him jump. Every stranger made him sweat. One evening, Kelechi came secretly to Obina. "They are asking too many questions," he whispered. "This thing is getting dangerous." Obina swallowed hard. "You must keep quiet. If they catch us, everything is finished." But deep inside, Obina knew that the truth can never stay hidden forever. Weeks passed since Chinedu's death, and Umudike was still heavy with grief. Pa Okori had stopped working on the farm. His friends tried to comfort him, but his heart was broken. The village elders tried to maintain peace, but tension was growing. People were beginning to whisper. Some villagers noticed small things. Obina always avoided eye contact. His hands were often dirty, as if he had been hiding something, and he seemed nervous whenever anyone mentioned Chinedu. One morning, Mrs. Uchenna, a neighbor, whispered to Pa Okori, Pa Okori, I saw Obina near Chinedu's room the night before. Before he died. I thought it was strange." Pa Okori's hands trembled. No, it cannot be." But doubt had been planted. Meanwhile, the police were asking questions. Officers came from Abangwu to the village. They interrogated everyone, from neighbors to friends, even the small boys in the village. Obina was careful. He lied when asked where he was that night, but inside he felt the walls closing in. Every step he took felt watched. Every whisper in the village sounded like a threat. Obinna realized that his jealousy had led to something bigger than he had imagined. He was no longer just the younger brother in Chinedu's shadow. He was now a suspect in a crime that could send him to prison for life. At night, he could not sleep. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of leaves outside made him jump, and the guilt, mixed with fear, began to eat him alive. Obinna started to understand a cruel truth. Once a line is crossed, there is no going back. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere in Umudike shifted. The once friendly neighbors now whispered behind Obinna's back. Children who used to play with him avoided his house. Even Pa Okori, though desperate to protect his younger son, began to notice the strange behavior and unease that surrounded him. One afternoon, the village elders called a meeting under the large iroko tree at the center of Umudike. The air was tense, heavy with unspoken accusations. "Something is not right," Chief Nwankwo said, looking around. Chinedu was a strong, healthy boy. How did he die in his own room? This is not a simple matter. Obinna sat quietly, his knees pulled close to his chest. He tried to appear normal, but the sweat on his forehead betrayed him. "Maybe it was an accident," Pa Okori said, his voice trembling. "We cannot think badly of anyone, even if we are sad." But the villagers were not convinced. Slowly, suspicion began to focus on Obinna. People remembered the night of the rain, how he had been unusually quiet, how he had avoided attention. Whispers grew louder. "Did you see how he avoided Chinedu? Something tells me he knows more than he lets on." Who else could be angry enough to... Obinna felt a cold fear grip his chest. The jealousy that had once burned so brightly in him now flickered like a dying flame, replaced by panic. Every glance from a neighbor felt like an accusation. Every cough or sudden shout made him flinch. That night, Obinna went to the old palm tree where he had met Kelechi and the others. He needed answers, guidance, but Kelechi only laughed, a bitter sound. "You can't hide forever," Kelechi said. "People are talking. The village is watching. This thing is bigger than you imagined." Obinna's heart sank. The walls he had built around his jealousy were now closing in, trapping him with guilt, fear, and the reality of what he had done. He realized that even if he wanted to undo the past, it was too late. Obinna could no longer sleep. Every night, Chinedu's face haunted him, smiling, laughing, and then the blood, the fear, and the silence. The weight of his actions pressed on him like a stone that would not move. He had tried to hide his guilt, but the village whispers, the suspicious glances, and his father's sorrow made it impossible. One evening, as the sun sank behind the red earth hills of Umudike, Obinna went to Pa Okori's room. His hands shook and his lips trembled. "Papa," he said quietly, I have to tell you something." Pa Okori looked at him, his eyes red and swollen from crying. "Obinna, what is it, my son?" Obinna's knees buckled and he fell to the floor. "It was me. I killed Chinedu." For a long moment, Pa Okori did not move. Then, like a tree struck by lightning, his face crumpled. He fell back onto the mat, clutching his head, shaking. "No, no, my son, my firstborn, my Chinedu," he screamed. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. Obinna tried to explain, but words failed him. He told how jealousy had grown in his heart, how he had been convinced that Chinedu was taking everything from him, how fear, envy, and pride had led him to the worst decision of his life. The village soon learned the truth. Obinna was taken to the elders' council. Kelechi and the other boys who helped him were exposed. Umudike was shocked. The boy they had seen as quiet, harmless Obinna was now the cause of their greatest sorrow. Pa Okori could not forgive. Even love could not erase the betrayal. His heart was broken in two, one part grieving for Chinedu, the other for Obinna, his son who had destroyed everything. Obinna realized that the consequences of jealousy were heavier than he had imagined. He had lost his brother, his father's love, and his place in the village forever. Obinna's arrest sent shockwaves through Umudike. The village that once celebrated the Okorie family now whispered in fear and disbelief. People avoided Obinna on the roads. Mothers held their children close when he passed, and even the elders spoke of him in hushed, sorrowful tones. In Abanwu, the police began formal investigations. Kelechi, Sunday, and Ibrahim were also taken in as accessories. Obinna, for the first time in his life, felt the full weight of law upon him. His chest tightened and nights were filled with endless fear. The trial became the talk of the town. Journalists came, neighbors gathered, and even distant relatives visited to witness the court proceedings. Obinna sat in the dock looking down at the wooden floor. Every word spoken by the prosecutors cut deeper than the worst farm labor he had endured. Every witness who testified against him reminded him of the night of the murder. His father, Paokori, rarely came to court. When he did, his face was a mixture of pain, disbelief, and silent rage. The love that once bound father and son had been shattered. Chinedu's friends gave tearful statements about his brilliance, kindness, and dreams for the future. The contrast between Chinedu's promise and Obinna's betrayal hung in the courtroom. Like a dark cloud, Obinna's defense lawyer argued that jealousy had clouded his judgment. But even law could not erase the fact that a brother's life had been taken by his own flesh and blood. Obinna realized that nothing could undo the past. He had stepped too far into darkness. By the final day of the trial, the judge's words were heavy and decisive. The court did not just punish crime, it reflected the deep tragedy of what envy and anger could do to a family. Obinna understood that his actions had not only destroyed Chinedu, but had torn apart the very fabric of his family and community. Years passed. Umudike slowly healed, but the scars of that fateful night remained. Chinedu's name became legend in the village, the boy who was brilliant, kind, and taken too soon. Children whispered his story as a warning. Jealousy can destroy even the closest bonds. Obinna sat behind bars in Abangwu prison, older now, thinner, and worn by regret. Every day he thought of Chinedu, his laughter, his dreams, his unwavering love even when Obinna had betrayed him. Guilt became a constant companion. Sleep was hard. His nights were haunted by memories of that rain-soaked night and the face of his father. Broken with grief, Paokori visited occasionally, older and frailer than ever. He never embraced Obinna, though sometimes his eyes softened with a painful mixture of love and sorrow. Words of forgiveness were never spoken, but in silence. There was a hint of understanding that humans can make mistakes, even deadly ones. Obinna tried to atone in small ways. He taught younger inmates to read, helped the sick, and wrote letters of apology to families who had lost children. But nothing could bring back Chinedu. Nothing could undo the choices he had made. One evening, Obinna sat by the small prison window, staring at the red earth outside, the same red soil that had been both home and witness to his darkest act. "I am sorry, my brother," he whispered. "If only I had been patient, if only I had let love guide me instead of envy. I wish I could go back." Outside, the wind carried the faint scent of mangoes and cassava, the smell of Umudike, of home. Obinna closed his eyes, remembering Chinedu smiling under the mango tree, the boy who had once been his hero, his brother, and the reminder of what he had lost. Jealousy had turned brothers into enemies. But in the end, the enemy had been himself. Redemption could come too late, but the lesson would never be forgotten. And in that silence, Obinna finally understood the cost of envy. It can destroy families, dreams, and love, leaving only regret behind.